I'm going to be honest with you. This list gets gross quick, but nonetheless, we're going to bring you the top 30 tight ends in Dynasty Fantasy Football for 2026. And like I said at the top, it does get gross very quickly in these tier rankings. So we're going to spend a little more time on the top, more than we did in the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, because there's a larger conversation we can have, especially in this S tier with Brock Bowers and Trey McBride, around we're not even comparing them necessarily just to tight ends. Now the comparison is, do these guys belong as pseudo wide receiver ones in the Drake London, Nico Collins, George Pickens, Tedero McMillan tier that we talked about on Tuesday, Lucas and I did. So we'll start Brock Bowers. You and Lucas have him at 1. I have Trey McBride at 1. We both have these two in our top 2 clearly, though. Do either of these guys belong in that conversation? And maybe also give us the why Brock Bowers over Trey McBride for you.
Yeah, let's start. So let's start with the receiver conversation, right? For Brock Bowers and for Trey McBride, we've seen them do it before, right? Just in 2024, Brock Bowers was, when you combine wide receivers and tight ends together, he was actually he was in the top 15 of players in usage between the two positions, and Trey McBride was actually the number 12 on that list as well. And then this past year, Trey McBride just popped off and finished 8th, so he was even top 10. Now, the difference between these two guys is Brock Bowers is coming off of a pretty horrendous sophomore season, right? This was not what you expected at all out of Brock Bowers, and more specifically this Raiders offense. Trey McBride, you kind of expected it just because you're like, if Marv doesn't take the step, it's going to be Trey McBride to kind of step up in the passing game. So now on to why I have Brock Bowers personally as my tight end 1 versus Trey McBride as my tight end 2. And it really comes down to the fact that Arizona is going through a coaching change right now. And I can't guarantee you that we're going to get the exact same offense where we highlight Trey McBride as our number 1 go-to guy. Is it a possibility? Can it still happen? Yes. Is Trey McBride the most talented weapon on that Arizona offense? It's a debate. And I would also lean yes. So you would like to think that Arizona would like to play to their strengths a little bit and try to continue to feature McBride. But the reason why I've got a little more optimism for Brock Bowers is the fact that we don't have a Marvin Harrison Jr. in Vegas. It is legitimately just Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty. So if I had to put, take a guess at who would be the tight end 1 overall next year, it would be Brock Bowers, because I'm like, hey, they have to get him the ball, versus McBride with the downfall of a more balanced offense or more evenly distributed offense between him and Marvin Harrison Jr., maybe even Michael Wilson, if the team is that high on him. So I like don't take what I'm not saying here and saying that like Brock Bowers is way better than Trey McBride. There's a reason why these two are in the S tier. It's because they are the elite of the elite tight ends. When we get into the A and B tier, that's when we can start to nitpick, and you can really see why Bowers and McBride separate themselves from everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Trey McBride this last season would have been the wide receiver 5. So that's why the question is, should he be in the wide, as treated as a top 12 wide receiver? I think so, because even if they both finish as wide receiver 15, the positional advantage they give you is much greater than taking even a fringe top 12 wide receiver. Trey McBride this last season set the NFL record for most targets by a tight end in a season, most receptions by a tight end in a season, would have been 3rd in targets, 2nd in receptions, and tied for 2nd in receiving touchdowns this year. So that's why he's my number 1. I understand the 3-year gap. I understand what Brock Bowers did as a rookie was unprecedented, but that is why I do have Trey McBride as my 1 over Bowers. But I mean, we're really splitting.
Yeah, right.
It is very close.
If I could even just say too, exactly from a numbers perspective, to give you a specific number, the reason why Bowers and McBride are in the S tier and why you're going to see some pretty popular names in the A tier is because if I had to take a bet on who is more likely to get 140 targets or more, that's Bowers and McBride. These A guys, they could probably push 100, maybe 110, So it's just not the same volume wise. They can, all these guys then in our A tier, they can all be effective with their volume, but there is just a step up in volume with Bowers and McBride.
For sure. And speaking of that A tier, we have Colson Loveland, Tyler Warren, Tucker Kraft, Harold Fannin Jr., who's probably the biggest surprise of everybody at the beginning of the year to be in this tier. Because we liked ourselves a little Tucker Kraft, obviously still a surprise, and Sam Laporta. But we'll start with Loveland and Tyler Warren because they had the opposite seasons. Tyler Warren started out and it was, should he have been the 102, 101, 103 in rookie drafts this season? The dude was amazing to start the year and then, started to fall off a little bit as the season went on. Obviously, Daniel Jones hurts, but he was consistently putting up 40, 50, 60, 70 yards a game in the beginning of the season. Then, when you have Riley Leonard and Phillip Rivers, it just doesn't quite work as well. Colson Loveland was the exact opposite. It was, if you draft him and redraft, you're sitting there like, well, this sucks. I have to drop him essentially. I mean, he had 6 targets in his first 3 games and then comes down the stretch and finishes with 10 targets, 13 targets in his last 2 games, puts up one of the best performances by a rookie tight end in playoff history last week. So you have both sides of the coin. Are we being too recency bias in our opinion of taking Loveland over Tyler Warren, or do you think it's warranted here?
I think it's pretty warranted. I'm not going to lie. I think the Tucker Kraft ACL recovery definitely makes it an easier break between Loveland and Warren and then the other 3. The same thing could be, when we talked about offense for McBride, you can say the same thing for Harold Fannin, right? No more Kevin Stefanski. Are we going to get it feels pretty like it's low hanging fruit to call that offense like tight end centric, but it really kind of was. So are we going to get that again? Sam Laporta, we got to get the play caller right because we saw it this year. If you don't get the play caller right, things just don't work out and you're not as productive or efficient as you were with Ben Johnson. So I think Loveland could probably seem the most recency biased just because of the last 3 weeks or last 3 games that he's played in. But honestly, with Warren and Loveland, they are going to be heavily featured in their offenses because they are that talented. That's what it comes down to for me. They are that talented. And when you look around them, I mean, there could be so much turnover in Chicago for whatever reason. Maybe they let go of DeAndre Swift and they trade DJ Moore, which if we're kind of reading between the lines there, like DJ Moore is pretty much on his way out there. So like Loveland could legitimately become like top 2 pass catcher on the Bears. Tyler Warren, same exact situation, could even be the number 1 guy if they move on from Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce signs somewhere else. Like there's all that to say, I believe it's not recency bias. I believe it is because there is a much brighter outlook for Loveland and Warren. Probably in the short term, maybe long term is way too long, way too far out there to talk about, but Loveland and Warren definitely seem like the top 2 guys here in this tier.
Yeah, and Loveland and Harold Fannin both only 21 right now, so incredibly young. Going to have them around for a long time. I do agree. I mean, if you're going to take any 2 from this tier that you had to pick that would be in the S tier next year, it'd be Loveland and Warren. Yes. Tucker Kraft, we love. No injury for Tucker Kraft, and he's in this conversation, right? He's with Loveland and Warren. It's just, what does next year look like? ACLs, especially for the bigger you get, right? That's just a little more of a question. You look at TJ Hawkinson, he's a guy I fell in the trap of, and he has not looked right. Obviously, Tucker Kraft, significantly younger than TJ Hawkinson, so makes a little bit of a difference. I also thought it was a little interesting. I didn't realize Harold Fannin Jr. averaged more points per game this year than Tyler Warren in half PPR formats. So obviously, it was a gross way to average more, right? I mean, it's just kind of a PPR scam over and over with the way the Browns offense is. But yeah, I don't know. These 4 younger guys, then you also have Laporta, but these 4 other ones, it's exciting what they could become, right? Because I don't necessarily think Fannin is going to make it in the S tier, but I think the other 3 can. Laporta has the back injury. At this point, we know what Laporta is. He's at his worst a top 6 tight end, top 7 tight end, right? I mean, that's the floor essentially for him moving forward, especially in this Detroit offense. So yeah, I just think it's fascinating the different kind of arcs that we're going to see of these players. I do want to go back to Tucker Craft though for a second because I know he was your darling. I know you were so excited. I know you made a move in our Dynasty League, sending away a first, and then the dude tears his ACL. So where is your level of optimism for him next season moving forward? And let's say right now you want to go get Tucker Craft. Are you still sending a 2026? Like if you have a late 26 first, are you still sending that for Tucker Craft? Or are you a little more cautious moving forward?
Honestly, like a late 26 first, like you said,
Yeah.
I'd consider it just
Yeah.
because I know how weak this draft class is.
Mhm.
Um, so the important thing to talk about with Tucker Craft is exactly what he injured, right? Because we've seen ACL tears that affect the MCL and the PCL and all those things. Those take longer to recover. For Tucker Craft specifically, it was just an ACL and a small meniscus tear. That's it. So we don't. It's not as drastic of an ACL tear, right? As if it, if we had more CLs damaged, right? So I'm not too scared off. Yes, there will be a bit of a ramp up. Yes, there will be, it'll be a slow takeoff here for Tucker Craft to officially kind of get back into the form that he was in before he got hurt. But I'm not expecting him to miss a ton of time. Like I don't think he's going to be, I understand that Green Bay has been conservative when it comes to kind of injury recovery and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not concerned in the slightest that like we're going to see the TJ Hawkinson drop off that we saw with him. I think Tucker Craft could very easily by season's end next year, despite coming off of this injury, kind of establish himself more firmly in this top 5 tight end conversation. You kind of look elsewhere at like the crowdsourced kind of dynasty rankings that you can find online. He's kind of closer to 10 right now.
Yeah.
I don't understand why. So maybe we are jumping the gun just a little bit, and you might look back at these next year and you're like, man, they were so off about some of these guys. But like, I would rather be ahead of the curve when it comes to Tucker Craft than when it's too late and then you can't buy him because it's a substantially higher price.
Obviously, too, want to just say at this point, Matt LaFleur is still the Green Bay coach, but they're discussing what the future looks like. We're assuming that they're not firing Matt LaFleur. If that really did change, obviously, it could change up a little bit. What also gives me a little more hope for Tucker Craft, what helps me buy in, is the fact that Luke Musgrave didn't do anything without Tucker Craft, right? It wasn't just, oh, he's in a good system here. It's no, he was genuinely, besides Josh Jacobs, the best playmaker on this team, and it wasn't close. And so that's what gets you excited about Tucker Craft. And now, before we move on to the C tier, which I'm going to be honest, we told you it gets gross, or to the B tier, excuse me. We told you it gets gross, and it starts with this tier. But before we do that, we just want to say thank you for all of you who helped us get to 6,000 subscribers. That's huge, huge.
Yeah.
We're very excited. We're going to be
go.
bringing you content all year long, 2 episodes a week until the summer. Then we'll kick it back up to 3. So yeah, we just want to ask you to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications because we don't want you to miss any of this content. But moving on to the B tier. It's not that bad, but it's not great.
Well,
It's not
not great.
Yeah,
When you look at who's above and then you go down to this, you're like, oof, that's a pretty steep drop.
from here on out, if your tight end 1 is in any of these tiers, you're feeling a little like, all right. The B tier, we got Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid, Around the World, Gadsden. I wasn't ready with the drop. Oh no.
Oh wait, hey.
I wasn't ready. It was a rookie mistake there. Rookie mistake. Jake Ferguson and Brenton Strange. And Ty, you said it kind of does feel like we have a B1 and a B2 here of Pitts and Kincaid versus Gadsden, Ferguson, and Strange. So why don't you just dive into for the people a little bit? Why do you feel like there is a little bit of a separation between the first 2 and the last 3 in this year?
Yeah, because you look at like Kyle Pitts and Dalton Kincaid, and they're a couple years older than Gadsden and Ferguson and Strange. But then you also look at like their current situations on their teams right now. Pitts and Kincaid arguably are like top 2 pass catchers on their team. And like, yes, you can make the argument that like Bijan's a wide receiver in Atlanta. I'm excluding the running back there in Atlanta. Okay. It's Drake London and Kyle Pitts then, right? So yes, that's kind of B1 because more established, you could argue. But the reason why I would put them B1 and put Gatson, Ferguson, and Strange in the B2 tier here is because we understand that their offenses are among the best in the NFL, or can be among the best, especially when it comes to fantasy points and fantasy production. Then the only reason why those 3 aren't in B1 is honestly because there's so many mouths to feed in their offenses. Like you look at Gatson in LA, Quentin Johnson is still trying. The team wants him to be a thing. You have Larry McConkey there. Keenan Allen is probably on his way out, but I mean, if the team was so, how do I say this? If they were so willing to bring in Keenan Allen on a 1-year deal, it wouldn't surprise me if they tried to bring in another wide receiver 3 to kind of play with Ladd and QJ there. Ferguson, same thing. You have CeeDee Lamb and you have George Pickens there. So you're kind of the number 3 guy there that's still pretty valuable because Dallas's offense can be among the best when it comes to fantasy. But again, you're not one of those top options in your offense. And Brenton Strange is probably the most unproven. I shouldn't say that. Gatson is literally coming off his rookie year, but like Brenton Strange hasn't really done a whole lot with his time in Jacksonville so far.
Now.
It's very crowded. We're talking about 4 receivers that he has to work against, right? With BTJ and Travis Hunter, because Gladstone said that they still want him to play both sides of the ball, which, okay, let's see how that works. But then you have Jacoby Myers, and this team wants to make Parker Washington a thing. Nice little player, Parker Washington, but like, there's just so much going on in their offenses that it's almost impossible to predict. Can one of them like emerge towards the top of B or maybe find themselves at the bottom of the A tier? I don't think they can, just because of their offensive situations.
Yeah. So Kyle Pitts this year is a free agent. Does that change the direction or how you feel about him, right? Do we think he goes back to Atlanta? Do we think he finds a home somewhere else? This landing spot happen? Is Kyle Pitts still going to be a thing? Obviously a little bit better of a season this year. Still not, top 5 pick worthy or anything, but we saw a little bit from Kyle Pitts. 118 targets, 88 receptions, 928 yards, 5 touchdowns. I mean, 6 touchdowns next year is pretty much guaranteed. So that's kind of exciting. That, but that is definitely one of the craziest things I have ever seen. 1 touchdown year 1, 2 year 2, 3 year 3, 4, and now 5 in year 5. If he doesn't hit 6, I mean, we got to riot. We have to riot.
We riot. Yeah. Kyle Pitts doesn't deserve to play football ever again then, because he let us all down.
Yes.
I'll say this about Kyle Pitts. He is so landing spot dependent here though, because if he signs back with Atlanta, that honestly might be the most disappointing thing, because you're like, hey, there are some teams out there that could use like a Kyle Pitts on their team. Like the 2 that come to mind right away for me, Miami Dolphins. Ooh. Now, if they can figure out their quarterback situation, but like, hey, Tyreek Hill probably on his way out, and Jalen Waddle, Kyle Pitts. I mean, hey, there's something there. But then what about a team like the Washington Commanders?
Yeah.
Like, you pair him up with a Jaden Daniels, that could be pretty exciting, right? So the problem then again is that every single like potential landing spot that you could have for Kyle Pitts, there's like there's schematic and coaching changes going on right now with those teams. So you're just like, man, like I can't. There's no way to predict. Like, man, can we find a better situation for Kyle Pitts? You can hope for it, but I'm like, man. I need to at least see the coaching dominoes fall first before really getting a feel for Kyle Pitts and exactly what the ceiling is for Kyle Pitts. But I think we all understand the kind of player that he is at this point, where he's going to float somewhere between 90 to 100 targets, not going to put up a ton of touchdowns. Yes, they've been coming around. Like you said, we got the 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons, or we got the 5th season, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, if he can hover around 100 targets 4 touchdowns ish. That's not a bad asset to have, but you're always going to be wishing you had more with him because, again, that's just been the story of Kyle Pitts' career so far.
Definitely. Is there, and I don't think there is. I think that's where I'm at. Is there a guy in this tier that you could see moving up to A tier this time next year, or are we kind of like this is the ceiling for these? I mean, maybe Kyle Pitts, but even then, I'm like, we've seen 5 years of it. At what point do we kind of just say this is the ceiling?
I want Dalton Kincaid to be up to make that jump so badly because I'm like, man, if he can really kind of step up as number 1 pass catcher for Josh Allen, which has always been the case for him. But I feel like Kincaid's in the same boat as Kyle Pitts of just like, I think we kind of know what we get out of him now. So honestly, I think the realistic answer, if I'm truly being honest with myself, I think this is like as high as these guys can reach.
Yeah. Maybe Gadsden, just because he's the youngest coming off his rookie season, right? Maybe he can elevate would be probably the answer. But yeah, Kincaid too. It's not like Kincaid hasn't had the opportunity right now. I mean, he's had this season they don't have wide receivers. They have nobody. So I know he's been dealing with injury, and I know that's always kind of been the thing too. Of maybe he's just got to get out from underneath the thumb of Joe Brady, holding him down. So I understand those things too, but yeah, it does feel disappointing that he was not able to take advantage this year.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, where you can get into the game this season playing Pick'em. It's extremely simple. Just pick higher or lower on 2 or more of your favorite players. For example, I'll pick the higher on Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Xavier Worthy. If I played $10 and got all 3 of them right, I would win $60 just by watching football. And that's the beauty of Pick'em. You can track your picks and your wins while you enjoy the game. Now, if you're not on Underdog yet, scan the QR code on your screen or use our code FELLAS when you sign up, because new customers will get $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5 on the app. Plus, Underdog will give you a free pick to use in your first entry. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show.
Moving on to the C tier now. I know I said C tier like 9 times for this other one, but it was the B tier. But moving on to the C tier now gets a little interesting. And we're going to kind of split this up, but you'll see how. We have Mason Taylor, Theo Johnson, George Kittle, Terrence Ferguson, Isaiah Likely, Dallas Goedert. And we're going to save Kittle and Goddard for the next tier. We'll talk about them with those guys, and you'll see why when you see that tier. It'll make a little more sense. Before we talk about the 3 younger guys, Mason Taylor, Theo Johnson, Terrence Ferguson, I do want to talk about Isaiah Likely. Because if you remember back to the beginning of the 2024 season, week 1 pops off, 9 catches, 11 targets. He's a toe tap away from a second touchdown, beating the Chiefs in week 1. And everybody was like, he's a top 10 dynasty tight end. And then it just hasn't panned out for the last 2 seasons. Ravens re-signed Mark Andrews this year, but now Likely is a free agent. Again, if he lands in the right spot, we don't even need to say the team, but if he lands in an advantageous spot for him to be a pass catcher, are you willing to push him higher up, or do you kind of think this is what we've seen from Likely is just kind of who he is?
I feel like there's so many hoops that we have to jump through here for Isaiah Likely because, yes, he's tight end 2 in Baltimore right now, right? I mean, yes, he's out of the contract, like you said. No John Harbaugh, so likely no Todd Monken. Maybe he becomes the head coach. I'm going to be honest. I don't really think like Todd Monken is like head coaching material. I think he really is kind of court. Yeah. So you do want Isaiah Likely to maybe get out of the shadow of Mark Andrews also, like you said, but maybe it's just because I've never really been in on Isaiah Likely, but I just don't. I think we could be. Here's what I'll say. I think this is where, or Isaiah Likely can forever be in this tight end 2 role, because I think there's a reality that like he resigns in Baltimore for 1 year for whatever reason. Maybe there just isn't a market for him. New coaching staff, new offense, kind of uses traditional tight end 1, tight end 2, and Isaiah Likely doesn't see the field as much as he has under Todd Monken. And now you could just be stuck with Isaiah Likely and may have to look at maybe even dropping him if your league is kind of shallow on the bench and you're just like, there's nothing really to wait for here for Likely. Maybe you could use the similar argument that we use for Kyle Pitts of just like, there are some teams that could use an Isaiah Likely on their team. But I think what separates like Kyle Pitts from Isaiah Likely for me is I don't see a world where Isaiah Likely is a top 2, maybe even top 3 option on whichever offense he lands. I think of Washington, right? Terry's ahead of him. Debo's ahead of him. Then it's probably Isaiah Likely, but there's no guarantee that Isaiah Likely walks into a new team, into a new situation, and he's instantly one of the top options in their offense. So I just take a look at our rankings, right? I've got him as my tight end 19. You and Lucas are definitely higher on Likely. So maybe you need to paint the more pro case for Isaiah Likely, because to me, I feel like this is kind of the highest a Likely can reach in terms of our rankings and our tiers.
Yeah, I think he is a guy. I believe he's a guy who could get up into that B tier, right? I don't think he's ever going to be an A tier player. I don't think, right? And it's not like getting up to the B tier is, oh my gosh, it's so great. That's the issue with all these tight ends. Everyone down is, yeah, you can go trade for these guys, but don't be giving up decent picks. Don't be giving up young, good wide receivers, because this is kind of right the ceiling that they're at. If we're hoping for 10 half PPR points multiple seasons in a row, right? That's the ceiling we're talking about here. We're not talking about guys who are going to be world beaters. So I do think there's a world where he looks good enough, is in a good enough offense where being the third option is good for fantasy. But I understand at the same time, everybody in this tier is so dependent on so many other factors, or they're older. and so it's just that's what it comes down to. I want to ask you about Mason Taylor, Theo Johnson, Terrence Ferguson, all of them. Theo Johnson is 24, but Mason Taylor 21, Terrence Ferguson 22. If you had to pick one of these guys to make that jump into the B tier, higher B tier type player, which one of these 3 are you picking to do that?
Oh, this one's tough, because I think there's something to like about every single one of these guys. Maybe more for me personally with Mason Taylor, because I was higher on him coming out of school, and I thought landing in the Jets is what was a pretty advantageous spot for him, just because of what we had seen with Sam Laporta. And you go, well, hey, you know what? Yes, Garrett Wilson's obviously the alpha in that offense, but maybe there's something for Mason Taylor there. Really bad quarterback play. And a that's an understatement. And I would even argue a pretty lackadaisical, pretty underwhelming scheme as a whole.
Yeah.
Kind of hurts his stock, I'm not gonna lie. Then I look at Theo Johnson and I'm like, well, it's Malik Neighbors. Wan'Dale Robinson's a free agent. Does Wan'Dale return? If he doesn't, Theo Johnson kind of steps up there, right? So you got that, but then you got Terrence Ferguson, man. And you're like, man, super young team took him with their first draft pick last year. And you know the Rams, and you're like, high scoring offense. But the things we need to consider here, Matthew Stafford coming to the end of his career here within the next couple of years. And we also need to just say the reality that Terrence Ferguson doesn't emerge. That like he's stuck in this 13 personnel grouping where they use
4 tight ends.
I mean, seriously, like, or make up whatever personnel number you want. They will use like 6 tight ends, right? Like he just is kind of lost in the sauce, and he's just in the mix. He doesn't really emerge. So all that being said, like there are things to, like I said, there are things to like about each of these guys. But if I had to pick one, I think I'm going Theo Johnson, just because I see a better, more straightforward path for opportunity for Theo Johnson, where I know, yes, I sacrifice maybe potential offensive production, right? Rams versus Giants, but I'm willing to just take the shot on an opportunity here for Theo Johnson.
Yeah, I think it's definitely Theo Johnson as well. Mason Taylor's very close for me. But just be connected with Jackson Dart, they seem to have good chemistry together. I think he's a guy who could be the second option in this offense. Mason Taylor would be second. Terrence Ferguson just scares me because I said 4 tight ends, but he was tight end 4 on the Rams this season in receptions. Like he was the 4th tight end on the Rams in receptions this year. So I'm not saying he's going to be stuck there, but definitely the other two, then Terrence Ferguson. But I think I do give Theo Johnson the nod there. Moving on to the D tier. This might make a little more sense why we're talking about Goddard and Kittle with these 4: Juwan Johnson, Hunter Henry, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, because these guys are old compared to those rookies. Johnson's 29, Hunter Henry 31, Mark Andrews 30, and TJ Hawkinson 28. Before we really dive in, though, we got to have the Kittle conversation. Because to me, I felt like you and Lucas were outrageously high on George Kittle. You have him at 11. Luke says him at 15. I have him at 18. He, for me, would fall into this next tier. I'm looking at this and I'm going, what is that face?
Lucas is just hanging me out to dry.
Yeah, he did change his ranking on you.
That's borderline cheating, man. When we
did.
did this and we finished it all out, there was a 10 next to George, or no, it was a 12. It was a 12 next to George Kittle. And then all of a sudden he's at 15, making me look like the ugly duckling here, making me look like the odd one out. Come on, man. That's jeez.
So Kittle is 32, torn Achilles, 95% chances out the entire next season. I'm very, very concerned that he never plays another snap in the NFL. And I wouldn't blame him. You want to talk about a guy other than maybe Rob Gronkowski, who's been beat up more than anybody in NFL history. George Kittle's top of that list, right? I mean, it's just everything that he could possibly hurt, he's hurt. And if he does come back, I'm not convinced it's good for fantasy. So maybe you need to give me the pro. Why is George Kittle still in the C tier argument?
Well, that stinks. Because well, okay, here we go. Here goes nothing. Okay, George Kittle. Probably because there is still an opportunity that the offense can support some kind of fantasy production. Yes, it may not look the prettiest. It may not be exactly the George Kittle that you're used to seeing. But being attached in this San Francisco offense does give him a floor that I think some of the other vets don't necessarily have. It does stink that, yes, he would be 34 when he comes back. And the fact that there's an out in his contract, isn't that so convenient for San Francisco? So I feel like maybe this is just hope talking for me here, because there's a reality that we have we get to the end of next season. We're going through our rankings, and George Kittle is very much a free agent and is looking for another place to play. So I wish I had more reasons, but I think the offensive floor that he has, because he's in San Francisco, is ultimately what keeps him alive or keeps him up in the C tier. I will say he should not be a top 12 tight end here in Dynasty. I'm giving into peer pressure that Lucas decided to change his to 15, so I'm going to change mine to 14 right on the spot. But when you look at Goddard, you look at the Saints with Juwan Johnson, Patriots with Hunter Henry, sure, but there's a contract there. Mark Andrews, who knows? TJ Hawkinson, who knows, right? Like, there is a little bit of a familiarity that you're getting with George Kittle in San Francisco at this moment.
Yeah. Moving on to the other 5. Goddard for us, I think, just gets slightly above the other 4 in the D tier just because of what we saw this year. Obviously, it was very touchdown based, but still averaged 10.3 fantasy points per game, was one of only 5 tight ends to do that. So he gets a little bit of extra love. And then it's Juwan Johnson, Hunter Henry, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, right? These are guys you're probably going to get 2 to maybe you could get 4 years out of like a Hawkinson. You're probably going to get between tight end 12 and tight end 15 production each of those seasons. You're not super excited, but at the same time, hey, I'm going to plug this guy in. I'm probably going to get 8 to 10 points in half PPR formats, I'm going to be okay with it. And that's just kind of maybe not even 8 to 10, maybe it's like 7 to 9, but that's where you're at with these guys. Any one of these guys that you like more than I know we like Goddard a little more than the other ones. That's why he's in the other tier. But between the other 4 and the D tier, any of these 4 that you like more than the other 4?
Probably Mark Andrews.
Okay.
Just because he plays with Lamar Jackson. Now there's the whole contract thing with Lamar Jackson and the coaching thing. And well, isn't it convenient that if we find the coach that doesn't elevate Lamar Jackson, well, then we can just cut Lamar Jackson and then it's his fault. It's his fault. We've had that discussion plenty of times in our group chat. But for the moment in time, like Mark Andrews does play with the best quarterback out of the rest of the bunch. Derrick Henry is still under contract here in Baltimore as well. So it's more so just I just am going to take a bet on the offense. And yes, I know Andrews' volume has just plummeted. So you are really banking on touchdowns. But when it's an offense like Baltimore, right, and we know the playmakers that they have, I'm willing to give that a chance. Yes, Hunter Henry in New England, but again, like I said, with his contract situation, he might not be on the team next year because there's an out. So I think just again with what I know right now, I think I would just take the dart throw on Andrews. But I even if the answer was Hunter Henry or Jawan Johnson, I just am not super excited about it.
The only thing I got out of your answer is that you said Lamar Jackson's better than Drake May right now, and you were going to piss off all the New England Patriots fans who are, well, he's the MVP this season. Sorry, I don't care. Lamar Jackson is better.
There's only one thing that I need to say. You give Lamar Jackson Drake May's schedule this year.
Ooh.
Yeah, let's move on. Let's move on.
And let's get really gross here in the E tier.
Blech.
David Njoku, AJ Barner, Gunnar Helm, Elijah Arroyo, Travis Kelce, Dalton Schultz, Ben Sinnott, and Chig Okonkwo. I mean, do we even need to talk about these guys? I guess we can talk about a couple of them. David Njoku, how disappointing that he is down here. He was felt firmly B tier for us this time last year. It was like, yep, this is our guy. Harold Fannin came in and said, no, this is my team. And David Njoku is a free agent. So maybe we could see a little resurgence. Do you have any faith that he could bump himself back up into that D tier? Or are you? No, I think he's pretty firmly.
I mean, for E to D tier.
Yeah,
totally. I mean, Njoku, like I think you can make an argument for him being at the bottom of D tier right now, just because you're like, we've seen what Njoku can do, right? Granted, that was in a very favorable system, but like he can do it again if he lands in the right spot. I think we would all just say, I don't think David Njoku finds a spot that is as pro tight end or as advantageous of a spot as Cleveland was for Njoku. So you're probably staring down at another like 60 to 80 targets for Njoku wherever he lands. And it's going to be somewhere between like 10 and 15 and tight end 20 for the entire year. And you're just like, this stinks because we were getting top 8 stuff from him in Cleveland, and now that's nowhere to be found.
Definitely. Yeah, it is a little upsetting that he has fallen this far. The next guy, AJ Barner. Ty, you were pretty convinced that this should be a C tier player, and we have him in the E tier because me and Lucas are disrespecting him. I will admit I gave more credence to Elijah Arroyo than I should have. In fact, wow, I did not realize my ranking has Arroyo higher than AJ Barner. That was a mistake. I do think that they
same with Lucas. What are you guys doing?
They should be swapped, but
what?
I don't personally believe that Barner should be as high as you have him. So maybe give us the pro AJ Barner.
Well,
I get it. Like I get you're excited, but I need to, I guess, just give me the pro AJ Barner. Maybe I'll decide to follow you.
Well, I would love to hear the anti first, because I understand that, like, yeah, he only had 68 targets this year. 6 touchdowns is ultimately what saved it. But like, I look at Seattle, maybe. Can I
Clint
just take a
Kubiak
guess?
is
Yes.
gone.
You think so? You think so?
Yes, I do.
Which I think is the only argument that you can make,
And I
because
think they got to bring in another wide receiver.
you think.
You can't go another season hoping that JSN alone is good enough for you in your offense. That was my thoughts going into it. I probably should have him higher. I probably do have him too low. But that was the reason I do have him in this tier.
I mean, you already do with Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah.
So
You just
you're
utilize him.
which I think if Cooper Kupp is out of the picture, like Rashid Shaheed, JSN and Rashid Shaheed become the elevated version of like Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty exciting. I'm not gonna lie. And you add in the fact too, Ken Walker may not return to the team. So one last potential pass catcher. Then it's JSN and Rashid Shaheed. And maybe you go double tight ends in with Arroyo and AJ Barner. Like yeah.
I'm also a Torrey Horton guy though. I think Torrey Horton is something coming up.
Yeah, we all are we not? I mean,
But
if you don't like Torrey Horton, something's wrong with you.
But that makes AJ Barner our fourth option in a team.
No. Torrey Horton could be a solid number 4 guy. AJ Barner could be solid number 3.
No.
I
think that's probably the disconnect there. Is I actually think Torrey Horton is going to be something, and you're like, I think he's going to be a cute piece.
Well, it's that, but then the Clint Kubiak aspect of it. If he doesn't return, it's another guessing game as to what Seattle's going to be next year. But if he does return, he doesn't take a head coaching job, like AJ Barner might be a sneaky. I mean, it feels like every single year when it comes to Dynasty, there's always one really young tight end that people don't value correctly. It's time to kind of buy in on. Last year, it was Tucker Kraft. Yes, the price was starting to kind of get up because people talked about him all the time. So I think before the discussion gets there, I feel like AJ Barner's that guy. It's not Theo Johnson. It's not Mason Taylor. I think it's AJ Barner.
Wow. There's your hot take of the episode, folks.
So if you're in a Dynasty league with me, feel free to send me an offer with AJ Barner in it, and we'll go from there.
Moving forward, Travis Kelce, we just want to acknowledge. Then the next week could just be off this list completely. But if he does decide to come back, because at this point you're so gross anyways, it's like, yeah, he deserves to be on here, because if he does play again next season, he's going to be a top 10 guy. So that's essentially where we're at there. Any other tight end before we log off that you want to give 15 seconds of fame to?
I think maybe Gunnar Helm, just because I look at Tennessee, and yeah, you could bring in a receiver with number 4, like a Carnell Tate. Can I just say Carnell Tate and Kim Ward?
Which I think helps Gunnar Helm, actually. Like,
it would help.
I don't think Gunnar Helm's a one option. No. Chigakonkwo is a free agent this season.
Dalton Schultz could also be a free agent. But I think with Gunnar Helm, he could be a like Damian Pierce of tight ends, if that makes sense, where he's like, you know what? There's 1 year, just 1 year where it's like, yeah, well,
all you know, just not being relevant.
Right. That could be Gunnar Helm. Look, there's a lot that needs to kind of fall into place. Like, you got to get the coach right. Maybe we go throughout free agency correctly. We draft correctly as well, but maybe Gunnar Helm. But I'm really just not buying in on any of them. I'm just kind of watching from afar, and I just like, you know what? I don't expect Gunnar Helm, Elijah Arroyo, Ben Sinnott, Chigakonkwo, or even Dalton Schultz to be top 10 guys next year. So if they end up being like top 20 guys, maybe somewhere between 15 and 20, I'm going to be like, well, cool. I can take a little personal victory lap, but there's nothing really for me to get invested with when it comes to like my own teams and a Dynasty.
Yeah. Dalton Schultz was the best out of this tier this season was tight end 17. Well, I guess besides Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce was tight end 9 points per game. Dalton Schultz was tight end 17. So that's kind of what you're looking at here for upside. Well, we won't bore you anymore with more gross names because it does get worse the further down you go.
Don't trust us.
So we won't go any further, but we thank you for going through our Dynasty tier rankings. Next week, I think we're getting into players for picks and picks for players, if I'm not mistaken. Nope. Players skyrocketing up our Dynasty boards. Ooh, that'll be a fun episode. So
AJ Barner.
One of ties. So yeah, it'll be a fun episode. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of that. If you want us on any of the other socials, FFL's on the X. I'm at CamLawFFF and Tyler's at Tyler_Plath. The FFL is on Instagram, Fantasy Football FL is on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok, or Fantasy Football FL Shorts if you want short form content over on YouTube. That does it for us today. Enjoy some playoff football this weekend, and we will see you next week. Deuces.